The morning light filtered through the tall windows of the Ashford estate, casting golden streaks across the polished marble floors. Sofia Alvarez moved through those hallways like a ghost, present but unseen, essential yet invisible. Her hands worked steadily, methodically as they had every morning for the past 3 years. She dusted the antique vases, straightened the silk curtains, and ensured every surface gleamed with perfection. The estate demanded nothing less. Sofia was 32 years old, though the lines around her eyes made her appear older. Life had a way of etching itself into the faces of people who worked with their hands, who rose before dawn, and collapsed into bed long after the moon had climbed the sky. She was originally from a small town in Texas, where her mother still lived in a modest house that Sofia sent money to every month. New York had promised opportunities, but what it delivered was exhaustion, wrapped in the illusion of progress. The Ashford estate sat in the heart of Manhattan's Upper East Side, a sprawling mansion that belonged to the Ashford family. Old money, old names, old indifference. Robert Ashford was a real estate mogul whose face appeared in business magazines with titles like the King of New York Property. His wife, Claudia, organized charity galas where champagne flowed and compassion was performed for cameras. Their 2 adult children visited occasionally, always in a hurry, always on their phones. None of them knew Sofia's last name. To them, she was simply the Maid, interchangeable with any of the other staff who kept their world running smoothly. But Sofia didn't mind. She preferred invisibility. It was safer that way. Safer than being noticed, safer than being questioned about the bruises that sometimes appeared on her arms. Remnants of a relationship she'd finally escaped 2 years ago. The estate employed several people, 2 other housekeepers, a chef, a gardener, and a driver. The driver was an old man named Mr. Leone. While the others barely acknowledged him, Sofia always noticed him. He was in his late 70s, with silver hair that still held traces of black, deep-set eyes that seemed to carry decades of unspoken stories, and hands that trembled slightly when he held the steering wheel. Mr. Leone was quiet, almost invisible himself. He wore the same dark suit every day, slightly worn at the elbows, and he always arrived exactly 30 minutes before he was needed. The Ashfords rarely used him anymore. They preferred their personal vehicles or hired cars with younger drivers. Mr. Leone had become a relic, kept on staff more out of habit than necessity. But Sofia saw him differently. She saw the way he stood a little straighter when someone spoke to him with respect. She noticed how his eyes softened when she brought him coffee on cold mornings, the steam rising between them like a small bridge connecting 2 forgotten people. It started simply enough. One October morning, as frost clung to the windows and the city was just beginning to stir, Sofia found Mr. Leone in the garage, struggling to open a jar of arthritis medication. His hands shook with the effort, frustration creasing his weathered face. She approached quietly, not wanting to startle him. "May I help you with that?" He looked up, surprise flickering across his features, then gratitude. "My hands aren't what they used to be," he said, his voice rough but gentle, carrying the hint of an Italian accent that decades in America hadn't fully erased. Sofia opened the jar easily and handed it back to him. "The cold makes everything harder." He studied her for a moment, really looked at her, something most people in this house never did. "You're kind," he said simply. "That's rare." From that day forward, a quiet friendship formed. Sofia would bring him coffee during her breaks, always black with 1 sugar, just as he liked it. They would sit together in the garage or the small staff room, not saying much but existing in comfortable silence. Sometimes he would tell her stories about New York in the old days, when the city was rougher, more dangerous, but somehow more alive. He never spoke about his past in detail, and Sofia never pressed. Everyone had secrets. She certainly did. The autumn deepened and the days grew shorter. The Ashford estate buzzed with preparations for the annual charity gala, an extravagant event that would showcase the family's generosity to hundreds of New York's elite. Sofia worked longer hours, polishing silverware until it gleamed, arranging flowers, ensuring every detail was perfect. Mr. Leone was instructed to drive several guests to and from the event. Sofia noticed he looked more tired than usual, his movements slower, more deliberate. One evening, as she was leaving through the service entrance, she found him sitting on a bench near the garage, breathing heavily. "Are you all right?" she asked, concern threading through her voice. He waved a dismissive hand. "Just tired. These old bones aren't made for long nights anymore." She sat beside him without asking permission. The October air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and distant rain. The sounds of the city, car horns, sirens, the rumble of the subway beneath the streets, formed a constant symphony around them. "You should rest more," Sophia said quietly. "They work you too hard." A sad smile crossed his face. "Work is what keeps a man alive. Without purpose, we're just waiting to die." There was something in his tone, something heavy and knowing, that made Sophia wonder what kind of life he'd lived before becoming a driver for people who barely saw him. But she didn't ask. Instead, she sat with him until his breathing steadied, until the color returned to his cheeks, until he felt strong enough to stand. "Thank you, Sophia," he said, and the way he said her name, with genuine warmth, made her chest tighten with an emotion she couldn't quite name. The night of the gala arrived with all its predictable grandeur. The estate transformed into a glittering palace. Women in designer gowns and men in tailored tuxedos moved through the rooms like beautiful, untouchable creatures. Sophia worked in the background, refilling champagne glasses, clearing plates, ensuring everything ran smoothly. She caught glimpses of Mr. Leone throughout the evening, opening car doors, helping guests with their coats, moving like a shadow among the light. Nobody thanked him. Nobody noticed him. But Sophia did. She always did. As midnight approached and the last guests departed, Sophia was finishing her final tasks in the kitchen when she heard raised voices from the garage. Her heart quickened. She recognized Mr. Leone's voice, steady but firm, and another voice, younger, aggressive, unfamiliar. She moved quietly toward the sound, staying in the shadows, her pulse racing. Through the partially open door, she could see Mr. Leone standing near the main estate car, facing two men in dark clothing. They weren't guests. They didn't belong here. "You're making a mistake," Mr. Leone said, his voice calm despite the tension crackling in the air. "This isn't the place." One of the men stepped closer, menacing. "We've been looking for you for a long time, old man. Did you really think you could hide forever?" Sophia's breath caught in her throat. Hide? From what? From whom? Mr. Leone's posture changed subtly. The trembling hands steadied. The fragile, elderly man seemed to grow taller, more solid, more dangerous. "I'm not hiding," he said quietly. "I'm waiting." The garage felt smaller suddenly, the air thicker. Sophia pressed herself against the wall, her heart hammering so hard she was certain they could hear it. The two men facing Mr. Leone were clearly not there for conversation. One was tall and broad-shouldered, with a scar running down his left cheek. The other was shorter, but moved with the coiled tension of someone trained to hurt people. "The Benedetti family sends their regards," the scarred man said, pulling something from inside his jacket. In the dim light, Sophia couldn't see exactly what it was, but the implied threat was clear enough. Mr. Leone didn't flinch. "Tell Antonio that the past should stay buried. There's nothing for him here." The shorter man laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the concrete walls. "Nothing? You destroyed half our operations before you disappeared. You think we'd forget that? You think we'd forgive?" Sophia's mind raced. Operations? Destroyed? This couldn't be the same gentle old man who thanked her for coffee, who smiled when she asked about his day. There had to be some mistake. But the way Mr. Leone stood, perfectly still, perfectly calm in the face of danger, told her this was no mistake. This was the real man, and everything she'd known about him had been a carefully constructed facade. "I was done with that life 20 years ago," Mr. Leone said evenly. "I faked my death to get out. I wanted peace. And you found it playing driver for rich people who don't even know your real name?" The scarred man's voice dripped with contempt. "Pathetic." "Maybe," Mr. Leone acknowledged. "But at least I'm alive. How many of the old crew can say the same?" The tension escalated. The shorter man took a step forward, and Sophia saw the glint of metal in his hand. Without thinking, operating on pure instinct, she grabbed the fire extinguisher mounted on the wall beside her and burst through the door. "Security is already on their way," she shouted, her voice stronger than she felt. "I've called the police." All three men turned toward her, surprise registering on their faces. The scarred man's hand moved toward his jacket again. "But Mr. Leone held up a hand. "No," he said firmly, his voice carrying an authority that made both men pause. "She's not part of this. She's innocent. You touch her, and whatever truce we might negotiate ends right now." The shorter man sneered. "You're in no position to negotiate anything, old man. But something in Mr. Leone's eyes must have communicated something beyond words because after a tense moment, the scarred man put his hand down. "This isn't over," he said. "Antonio wants to meet with you. Tomorrow night. The old warehouse on the Brooklyn waterfront. You remember the place?" "I remember. Come alone. And if you're smart, you'll stay alive a little longer." The two men backed toward a dark sedan parked near the service entrance, their eyes never leaving Mr. Leone until they climbed in and drove away into the night. The silence that followed was deafening. Sophia's hands shook as she slowly lowered the fire extinguisher. Her entire body trembled with adrenaline and fear and confusion. "Mr. Leone turned to face her, and for the first time since she'd known him, she saw him clearly. Not as a fragile old driver, but as someone else entirely. Someone dangerous. Someone with a past soaked in violence. "You shouldn't have interfered," he said quietly, but there was no anger in his voice, only concern. "Now they've seen you." "Who were they?" Sophia's voice came out barely above a whisper. "Who are you?" He was silent for a long moment, weighing his words carefully. Finally, he gestured toward the small staff room. "Come, sit down. You deserve answers." They sat across from each other at the worn wooden table where they'd shared so many quiet conversations. But this time, everything was different. The comfortable silence had been replaced by a charged tension that made the air feel electric. "My name isn't really Mr. Leone," he began. "Well, it is, but not the way you think. I'm Don Vittorio Leone, or at least, I used to be." He paused, studying her reaction. "I was the head of one of New York's most powerful crime families. For 30 years, I ran operations across the East Coast. Construction, unions, imports. Things I'm not proud of now." Sophia listened, her mind struggling to reconcile this information with the gentle man who'd told her stories about old New York, who'd smiled when she brought him coffee. "I was good at it," he continued, his voice heavy with something that might have been regret. "Too good. I built an empire, but empires require blood to maintain them. I did things, terrible things. I ordered actions that destroyed lives, broke families, left scars that will never heal." The October wind rattled the windows, and somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, the eternal soundtrack of the city that never slept. "But I grew tired," Vittorio said. "Tired of the violence, tired of looking over my shoulder, tired of being someone I'd grown to hate. I had no family left. My wife died young. My children never knew what I really did. And by the time I wanted to change, they'd moved away and cut ties with me. I was alone in a world I'd built on fear." "So you faked your death," Sophia said, the pieces slowly coming together. 20 years ago, yes. I staged a car accident, left enough evidence to convince everyone I was gone, and I disappeared. I had money hidden away, enough to live modestly. I became someone else, just another old man in a city full of them. For 2 decades, I found a kind of peace I'd never known. Working simple jobs, being invisible, living without the weight of that crown. But they found you. Yes. Someone talked, or someone recognized me, or maybe they never really believed I was dead and just waited patiently. The Benedetti family. They were our biggest rivals. I dealt them significant blows before I left, damaged their operations severely. Antonio Benedetti was young then, watching his father struggle to rebuild what I'd destroyed. He's older now, more powerful, and he remembers. Sophia processed this information, her world tilting on its axis. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. I could run again, disappear into another city, another life. But I'm tired of running. I'm 78 years old, Sophia. How many more years do I have? How many more lives can I live?" "So you'll go to this meeting?" "I think I have to. Maybe we can find some resolution. Maybe after all these years there's a way to make peace." But his eyes held no real hope for that outcome. Sophia stood, pacing the small room. Her mind raced with implications she was only beginning to understand. "Those men, they saw me. You said I'm in danger now." Vittorio's face darkened with guilt and worry. "I won't let anything happen to you, I promise you that. You showed me kindness when no one else did. You treated me like a human being. I won't let my past destroy you. But you can't guarantee my safety, can you?" Sophia asked, seeing the truth in his eyes. "You're just one old man, no matter who you used to be. And they're an entire organization." The weight of that reality settled between them like a physical presence. Sophia had stumbled into something far beyond her understanding, and there was no clear path out. She thought about running, leaving New York entirely, disappearing the way Vittorio had once done. But where would she go? Her mother depended on the money she sent. She had nothing saved, no resources for a new start. "Why did you help me just now?" Vittorio asked suddenly. "You could have stayed hidden, pretended you saw nothing. Instead, you put yourself at risk for someone you barely know." Sofia considered the question. "Because you were kind to me. Because in this house where I'm invisible, you saw me, you thanked me, you said my name. That might not seem like much, but when you're treated like furniture every day, those small moments of being seen, they matter." Something in Vittorio's expression softened, became almost vulnerable. "I spent 30 years making people fear me. And in the end, the only person who'll risk anything for me is someone I've known for a few months. Someone who knows me as the person I wanted to be, not the person I was." They sat in silence for a while. Two invisible people in a world that had no use for them, bound together now by circumstances neither had chosen. Finally, Vittorio spoke. "I'm going to that meeting tomorrow night. But before I do, I need to make arrangements. I have resources, money that's never been touched. If something happens to me, I want you to have it. Enough to start over somewhere safe, somewhere they'll never find you." "Don't talk like that," Sofia said, though fear gripped her heart. "You'll survive this. You've survived everything else." "Maybe," he said quietly. "But just in case, I need you to know where to find what I'm leaving you. And I need you to promise me something." "What?" "If I don't come back from that meeting, don't try to find out what happened. Don't ask questions. Don't seek revenge or justice or any of those noble things. Just take the money and disappear. Live the life I never could. A quiet life. A peaceful life. A good life." Sofia wanted to protest, to argue, to insist that there had to be another way. But she saw the determination in his eyes, the acceptance of whatever fate awaited him. He'd been running from his past for 20 years, and he was tired of running. "I promise," she whispered, though the words felt like betrayal. Vittorio smiled then, a genuine smile that transformed his weathered face. "Thank you, Sofia Alvarez, for everything." The next day passed in a strange, suspended reality. Sofia went through her usual routines at the Ashford estate, but everything felt different now. She polished the same silver, dusted the same shelves, smiled the same professional smile at the family members who still didn't know her name. But inside, her mind churned with anxiety and fear. She barely saw Vittorio during the day. He kept to himself, presumably making whatever arrangements he deemed necessary. The garage felt emptier somehow, as if it already anticipated his absence. The November sky hung low and gray over Manhattan, promising rain that never quite materialized. The temperature had dropped overnight, and a bitter wind swept through the city streets carrying the scent of approaching winter. The seasons were changing, Sofia thought. Everything was changing. As evening approached, Sofia found herself in the staff room, unable to focus on anything. She'd tried calling her mother earlier but hung up before the call connected. What would she even say? That she'd somehow become entangled with a former Mafia boss? That her simple, invisible life had suddenly become dangerously complicated? At 7 o'clock, Vittorio appeared in the doorway. He'd changed clothes, no longer wearing his driver's uniform, but instead a well-tailored charcoal suit that probably dated back decades but still fit him perfectly. He looked different, stood different. The transformation was startling. This was Don Vittorio Leone, not the humble driver everyone ignored. "I'm leaving now," he said simply. Sofia stood. "You're really going through with this?" "I have to. Running again won't solve anything. These people are patient. They'll find me eventually, or they'll find you, or they'll find someone else I've shown kindness to. This ends tonight one way or another." He handed her a small envelope. "Inside is a key to a safety deposit box at First National Bank on 42nd Street. The box number and authorization codes are written there. There's also a phone number for a lawyer I've used before. He's retired now, but trustworthy. He'll help you access everything without drawing attention." Sofia took the envelope with trembling hands. It felt heavy, weighted with implications she didn't want to consider. "How much money are we talking about?" she asked quietly. "Enough to never work another day in your life if you don't want to. Enough to take care of your mother. Buy a house somewhere peaceful, start whatever life you can imagine." He paused. "I never spent it because it was earned through means I'm not proud of. But at least this way it can do some good. It can give you the freedom I never had. I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything. Just promise me again. If I don't come back, you'll use it. You'll disappear and be safe." "I promise," she said. though tears blurred her vision. But you will come back. You have to. Vittorio stepped forward and, in a gesture that surprised them both, pulled her into a brief paternal hug. You remind me of my daughter, he said softly. She would be about your age now. I wonder if she's happy, wherever she is. Then he released her, straightened his jacket, and walked toward the service entrance with the steady, purposeful gait of a man walking toward his destiny. Sophia watched him go, every instinct screaming at her to stop him, to call the police, to do something other than stand there helplessly. But she'd made a promise, and somehow, she understood that Vittorio needed to do this his way, to face his past, on his own terms. The garage fell silent after he left. Sophia remained in the staff room, unable to leave, unable to do anything but wait. The minutes crawled by with agonizing slowness. 8 o'clock came and went. 9 o'clock. 10. She tried to distract herself with her phone, scrolling mindlessly through social media, but nothing held her attention. Every sound made her jump, every car passing outside, every creak of the old building settling, every distant siren. At 11:30, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It's done. I'm coming back. Wait for me in the garage. V. Relief flooded through her so intensely she nearly collapsed. He was alive. He was coming back. Whatever had happened at that meeting, he'd survived it. Sophia rushed to the garage, arriving breathless and hopeful. The space was dark except for a single overhead light that cast long shadows across the concrete floor. She waited, pacing nervously, checking her phone every few seconds. 10 minutes later, she heard a car approaching. But something felt wrong. The engine sounded different, heavier, more aggressive than Vittorio's usual vehicle. And there were multiple cars, not just one. Sophia's instincts flared with warning. She moved quickly to the shadows, pressing herself against the wall behind a stack of storage boxes. 3 black SUVs pulled into the garage, their headlights cutting through the darkness like searchlights. Men emerged from the vehicles. 6 of them, all dressed in dark clothing, all moving with military precision. And then from the middle SUV they pulled someone out. Vittorio. Sophia's heart stopped. He was alive, but barely. His face was badly beaten, blood streaming from a cut above his eye, his expensive suit torn and stained. They held him roughly, forcing him to his knees in the center of the garage. A 7th man emerged from the lead vehicle. He was younger than Vittorio, perhaps in his late 50s, with silver hair slicked back and a face that might have been handsome if not for the coldness in his eyes. He wore an impeccable black suit and moved with the confident swagger of someone who'd never faced consequences for his actions. Antonio Benedetti. It had to be. I gave you a chance, Vittorio, Antonio said, his voice carrying easily through the empty space. I offered you a clean death, quick and painless, in exchange for information about the accounts you stole from us, the operations you sabotaged, the people you turned against us. Vittorio spat blood onto the concrete. And I told you to go to hell. Antonio smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Always the tough guy, even at the end. My father respected you once, did you know that? He said you were the most dangerous man in New York because you had nothing to lose. But look at you now. Old, weak, hiding like a coward in someone else's house. At least I'm not building my empire on my father's corpse, Vittorio shot back. You're nothing but a shadow of a dead man, Antonio. You'll never be half the leader he was. The word struck a nerve. Antonio's face flushed with anger and he nodded to one of his men. The blow came swift and brutal. A fist to Vittorio's face that sent him sprawling onto the cold floor. Sophia bit her lip to keep from crying out, tasting blood. She wanted to run, to scream, to do something. But what could she possibly do against 7 armed men? She was just a maid, invisible and powerless. Where's the girl? Antonio asked suddenly, glancing around the garage. The one who interrupted us yesterday. I thought she might be here. She's long gone, Vittorio gasped, pulling himself back to his knees. Ran as soon as she realized what was happening. She's probably halfway to California by now. Antonio studied him for a long moment. You're lying. I can always tell when someone's lying. She means something to you, doesn't she? The way you protected her yesterday. That wasn't just strategy. You actually care about her. She's nobody, Vittorio insisted. Just a worker who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Then you won't mind if we find her and make sure she can't tell anyone what she saw. Antonio pulled out his phone, scrolling through something. Sofia Alvarez, 32 years old, originally from Texas. Mother still lives in Houston, works as a housekeeper here at the Ashford estate. Should be easy enough to track down. Terror shot through Sophia like lightning. They knew her name. They knew about her mother. There was nowhere to hide, nowhere to run that they couldn't find her. Vittorio's face went pale. Leave her alone. This is between us. She's innocent. There's no such thing as innocent, Vittorio. You of all people should know that. Antonio pocketed his phone. But I'll make you a deal. Tell me where you hid the money. All of it, every account, and I'll let her live. I'll even forget she exists. You have my word. Your word means nothing. Perhaps. But it's the only chance she has. The silence stretched out, heavy and suffocating. Sophia could see the internal war playing out on Vittorio's battered face. The desire to protect her warring with a lifetime of distrust, of knowing that men like Antonio never kept their promises. And then, from her hiding place, Sophia made a decision. She'd spent 3 years being invisible, 3 years accepting that she didn't matter, that she was just another faceless worker in a world that had no use for people like her. But Vittorio had seen her. He'd treated her with kindness and respect. He'd shown her that she had value, that her existence meant something. She couldn't let him die protecting her. She wouldn't. Sophia stepped out from behind the boxes, her hands raised, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. I'm here. Every head turned toward her. Vittorio's expression transformed into one of horror and desperation. No, Sophia, run! But it was too late. 2 of Antonio's men moved quickly, grabbing her arms before she could change her mind. They pulled her roughly into the center of the garage, forcing her to stand beside Vittorio. Antonio studied her with interest, as if she were a curious specimen he'd found. So this is the girl who risked everything for a dying old man. How touching. He turned to Vittorio. Last chance. The money, or I kill her right in front of you. And then I kill you. And then I find her mother and kill her too. I'll erase every trace of her existence from this world. Vittorio looked at Sophia, and in his eyes, she saw something she'd never seen before. Tears. This man who'd built an empire on violence, who'd made people fear him for 3 decades, who'd faced death 100 times without flinching. He was crying. I'm sorry, he whispered to her. I'm so sorry for dragging you into this. Sophia shook her head. You didn't drag me anywhere. I chose to help you. I'd choose it again. And in that moment, something shifted in Vittorio's expression. The resignation faded, replaced by a sudden, fierce determination. He looked up at Antonio, and when he spoke, his voice carried the full weight of the man he used to be. You want the money? Fine. I'll tell you where it is. Every account, every hiding place, every cent I took from your family. But first, you let her walk out of here. You let her leave this garage, leave this city, leave this life. And you never, ever come looking for her. Antonio considered this. And how do I know you're not lying? How do I know the money even exists? Because I'm too tired to lie anymore, Vittorio said simply. Because I'm ready for this to end. Because she deserves better than to die in a garage with an old fool who should have stayed dead 20 years ago. The calculation played out on Antonio's face. He wanted that money, wanted it badly enough to consider letting Sophia go. But could he trust Vittorio? Finally, he nodded. All right. She walks. But if you're lying, I will find her. I will hunt her to the ends of the earth. Is that understood? Understood. Antonio gestured to his men, and they released Sophia's arms. She stumbled slightly, her legs weak with fear and adrenaline. Vittorio caught her eye one last time, and in that look she understood everything he was telling her without words. Run. Live. Remember me. Sophia's feet felt like lead as she took her first step toward the garage exit. Every instinct screamed at her to stay, to fight, to do something other than abandon Vittorio to his fate. But she knew, with a certainty that ached in her chest, that this was what he wanted. This was his way of finally doing something good, something redemptive. After a lifetime of choices, he regretted. She made it 3 steps before the sound of approaching sirens cut through the night air. Everyone froze. The sirens were close and getting closer. Multiple vehicles, converging on their location with urgency. Antonio's men immediately tensed, hands moving toward concealed weapons, eyes darting between their boss and the garage entrance. Antonio's face darkened with fury. Did you set us up, old man? Vittorio's expression was genuinely confused. I don't know what. The garage flooded with light as police vehicles blocked both exits. Officers poured in, weapons drawn, voices overlapping in authoritative commands. NYPD, nobody move. Hands where we can see them. Chaos erupted. Antonio's men scattered, some attempting to flee, others reaching for weapons. Shots were fired, sharp, deafening cracks that echoed off the concrete walls. Sophia dropped to the ground instinctively, covering her head with her hands. Through the confusion and noise, she felt someone grab her arm, not roughly, but urgently. She looked up to see Vittorio, his face still bloodied but his grip strong. "Stay down," he said, shielding her body with his own. The gunfight lasted less than 2 minutes but felt like an eternity. When the noise finally ceased, the garage was full of police officers, and several of Antonio's men lay on the ground, subdued, arrested, or injured. Antonio himself stood with his hands behind his head, being read his rights by 2 officers while murder blazed in his eyes. Sophia and Vittorio remained on the ground, both breathing heavily, both trying to process what had just happened. A detective approached them, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and an air of authority. "Mr. Leone," she said, and the way she said it, with respect rather than fear, surprised both of them. "Or should I say Don Leone? We need to talk." What followed was a long night at the police station. Sophia and Vittorio were separated, each questioned in different rooms by different detectives. Sophia told them everything, about finding Vittorio in the garage 2 nights ago, about the conversation that revealed his true identity, about the meeting and Antonio's threats. The lead detective on the case, Detective Sarah Chen, treated Sophia with unexpected kindness. She brought her coffee, spoke gently, explained what was happening. "You're not in any trouble," she assured Sophia. "You're a victim in this situation and a witness. What you've told us confirms what we already suspected." "I don't understand," Sophia said, exhausted and confused. "How did you even know to come to the garage tonight?" Detective Chen smiled slightly. "Because Vittorio Leone called us this morning. He walked into our precinct, told us who he was, and offered to help us bring down Antonio Benedetti's entire operation." Sophia's mind reeled. "But why didn't he tell me?" "Because he was protecting you. If things had gone wrong, if you'd known he'd contacted us, Antonio might have seen it in your eyes, might have used you to get information. This way, you were genuinely in the dark." The pieces slowly came together. Vittorio had never intended to die in that garage. He'd planned this carefully. One last strategic move from a man who'd spent decades thinking 3 steps ahead of his enemies. "The meeting yesterday," Sophia said slowly, "with Antonio. That wasn't about making peace, that was about gathering evidence." "Exactly. Vittorio wore a wire. He got Antonio to confess to multiple crimes, including the murder of 3 rival gang members in the past 6 months. Combined with his testimony about the organization's structure and operations, we have enough to dismantle the Benedetti family completely. But won't he go to jail too? For his past crimes?" Detective Chen's expression grew complicated. "That's where it gets interesting. 20 years ago, there was a federal investigation into the Leone crime family. The case was built, warrants were prepared, arrests were imminent. And then Vittorio Leone died. Or so everyone believed. The case closed. Files were archived. Evidence was cataloged and stored. So he's free? After everything he did? Legally, it's complicated. The statute of limitations has expired on many of the charges. Others can't be prosecuted because the evidence chain was broken when he was declared dead. The prosecutor's office has decided that Vittorio's cooperation in bringing down an active criminal organization outweighs pursuing charges that might not even stick." She paused. "He's not free, exactly. He'll be in witness protection for the rest of his life, relocated to somewhere far from New York, living under a continuar new identity. But he won't see the inside of a prison cell." Sophia absorbed this information. Relief and sadness mixing in equal measure. "Can I see him?" "Soon. We need to finish processing everything first." Hours passed. The November night gave way to early morning, that gray pre-dawn time when the city held its breath before waking. Sophia sat in a waiting area, drinking terrible police station coffee, watching officers move through their routines with the exhausted efficiency of people working the night shift. Finally, Detective Chen returned. "He's ready to see you. You'll have 15 minutes. They led her to a small conference room. Vittorio sat at a table, his injuries cleaned and bandaged, wearing clothes that weren't his own, probably borrowed from evidence storage. He looked smaller somehow, more vulnerable without his driver's uniform or his expensive suit. Just an old man who'd lived too long with too many regrets. He stood when Sophia entered, relief washing over his battered features. "You're all right," he said, as if he'd been holding his breath since they'd been separated. "I'm all right," she confirmed, moving around the table to stand beside him. "You lied to me. I protected you. There's a difference. You let me think you were walking to your death. You let me believe." Her voice broke, tears finally spilling over. "I thought I'd lost you." Vittorio's own eyes glistened. "I couldn't tell you the truth. If you'd known I'd contacted the police, you might have acted differently. Antonio would have sensed something was wrong. The plan would have failed and we'd both be dead right now. But you're alive. We're both alive." Sophia laughed through her tears, the sound slightly hysterical with relief and exhaustion, and a dozen other emotions she couldn't name. "Yes," Vittorio agreed quietly. "Against all odds, we survived." They sat together in comfortable silence for a moment, the kind of silence they'd shared so many times before in the garage, in the staff room, in the small stolen moments when two invisible people had found each other in a world that ignored them both. "They told me about witness protection," Sophia said finally. "That you'll be leaving, going somewhere far away." "Yes. Somewhere quiet, I hope. Somewhere I can spend whatever time I have left without looking over my shoulder." He paused. "I'm sorry I won't be able to say goodbye properly. They'll move me quickly, within days. New name, new location, new life. Again. Will you be alone?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Vittorio looked at her carefully. "What are you asking, Sophia?" She took a deep breath, surprising herself with what she was about to say. "I'm asking if you'd want company. If witness protection would allow someone to come with you." Shock registered on Vittorio's face. "You can't be serious. You have your whole life here, your job, your mother." "My mother would understand. I send her money, but I rarely see her." "My job?" Sophia laughed bitterly. "Cleaning the houses of people who don't know my name? That's not a life, Vittorio, that's just existing. But to leave everything, to go into hiding with an old man you barely know." "I know you," Sophia interrupted firmly. "Maybe not everything about your past, but I know who you are now. I know you're kind, I know you say thank you. I know you see me when everyone else looks through me like I'm not there." She reached across the table, taking his weathered hand in hers. "You've become my family, Vittorio. The only real family I've had in years." Tears rolled down Vittorio's cheeks, unchecked. "I don't deserve this, I don't deserve you. Maybe not, but you have me anyway, if you want me." He squeezed her hand, unable to speak for a long moment. When he finally found his voice, it was rough with emotion. "I would like that very much." Detective Chen knocked on the door, poking her head in. "Time's almost up, but I should mention, the Witness Protection Program does allow for immediate family members to be relocated together, and in some cases, they extend that to include close associates who might also be in danger." She looked directly at Sophia. "Antonio Benedetti knows your name, your face, and your connection to Vittorio. If you stayed in New York, you'd always be looking over your shoulder. The program could protect you too if you wanted." Sophia looked at Vittorio, then back at Detective Chen. "What would I need to do?" "A lot of paperwork, several interviews, background checks. The process usually takes weeks, but given the circumstances, we can expedite it. You could be relocated with Vittorio within a week, 10 days at most." "I'll do it," Sophia said without hesitation. The next week passed in a blur of interviews, paperwork, and preparations. Sophia gave her notice at the Ashford estate, a simple resignation that nobody questioned. The family barely acknowledged her departure, just as they'd barely acknowledged her presence. She packed her few belongings, called her mother to explain she was moving for a new job opportunity, a version of the truth that wouldn't worry her, and tied up the loose ends of her New York life. The safety deposit box Vittorio had told her about remained unclaimed. When she mentioned it to the federal agents handling their relocation, they explained that the money couldn't come with them. It would be flagged, traced, and ultimately seized as proceeds from criminal activity. But the Witness Protection Program would provide them with new identities, housing, and enough financial support to start over. Sophia found she didn't care about the money. She'd lived without wealth her entire life. She could continue doing so. What mattered was the chance to start fresh, to build a life where she was more than invisible. On a cold November morning, as frost painted delicate patterns on the windows, Sofia and Vittorio were escorted by federal marshals to an airport. They flew to their new home, a small town in Oregon, far from the chaos and danger of New York, far from the ghosts of their old lives. Their new identities were simple: Thomas Wilson, a retired accountant, and his daughter Sarah Wilson, who'd moved to take care of him in his old age. The cover story was uncomplicated, designed to deflect curiosity rather than invite it. The town was called Cedar Ridge, nestled in the foothills with a population of just under 3,000 people. It had a main street with a diner, a library, a hardware store, and not much else. The pace of life was slow, peaceful, almost aggressively normal after the intensity of New York. Their house was small but comfortable. 2 bedrooms, a modest kitchen, a living room with large windows that overlooked pine trees and mountains. The federal government had arranged everything, including basic furniture and initial supplies. That first night they sat together on the front porch, watching the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that Sofia had never seen in the city's light-polluted skies. "It's quiet," Vittorio observed. "Almost too quiet." "We'll get used to it," Sofia said, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders against the evening chill. "Do you regret it, leaving everything behind?" She considered the question carefully. "I left behind a life where I didn't matter, where I was just a pair of hands that cleaned and polished and served. Here, I can be anything. We can be anything. I'm 78 years old, Sofia. I'm not sure how much anything I have left in me." She smiled, bumping his shoulder gently with hers. "Then we'll make the most of whatever time there is." The weeks turned into months. Winter arrived with heavy snowfall that transformed Cedar Ridge into a picture postcard. Sofia found work at the local library, a job that let her interact with people, recommend books, organize community events. She discovered she enjoyed it, enjoyed being part of a community where people knew her name, even if it was a fake name, and greeted her with genuine warmth. Vittorio settled into retirement with surprising grace. He volunteered at the community center, teaching Italian cooking classes to curious locals. He took long walks in the mountains, read voraciously, and spent hours in the small garden behind their house, coaxing vegetables and flowers from the Oregon soil. They fell into routines, comfortable and domestic. Sofia would make coffee in the morning, and they'd sit together discussing their plans for the day. They'd share meals, watch old movies, argue good-naturedly about books and politics and whether tomatoes were better grown in the ground or in raised beds. Slowly, gradually, Vittorio's nightmares faded. The tension that had always lived in his shoulders, even when he'd been pretending to be just a simple driver, finally eased. The ghosts of his past still visited occasionally. She could see it in his eyes sometimes, that distant look that meant he was remembering things he wished he could forget. But those moments became less frequent as the peaceful days accumulated. Spring arrived, bringing wildflowers and longer days. On a particularly beautiful April afternoon, as they sat on the porch watching hummingbirds visit the feeder Sofia had installed, Vittorio spoke quietly. "I never thanked you properly." "For what?" "For saving my life. Not in the garage. Anyone could have called the police, but for saving my life before that, for seeing me, for treating me with kindness, for reminding me that I was more than the worst things I'd ever done." Sofia felt tears prick her eyes. "You saved my life too, you know. I was drowning in New York, just going through the motions, convinced I didn't matter. You showed me I was wrong. We saved each other then," Vittorio said, taking her hand. Two invisible people who finally became visible to one another. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the afternoon fade into evening, watching their quiet life unfold around them. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't exciting, but it was theirs, built on honesty and friendship, and the second chances that neither of them had expected to receive. In the distance, church bells rang, marking the hour. A neighbor waved as he walked his dog past their house. The smell of someone grilling dinner drifted on the evening breeze. Ordinary moments, the kind that most people took for granted, but that felt miraculous to two people who'd spent so long living in the shadows. Sofia thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, invisible, exhausted, convinced her life would never amount to anything more than polishing silver and serving people who didn't see her. She thought about Vittorio as he'd been then too, a gentle old driver hiding from a violent past, believing he'd never deserve peace or redemption. They'd both been wrong. Life had surprised them, terrified them, and ultimately transformed them. The journey had been dangerous and painful, but it had led them here, to this porch, this town, this unexpected family they'd created from the ruins of their old lives. "What are you thinking about?" Vittorio asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. "I'm thinking about how strange life is. How a simple act of kindness, me helping you with a jar of medicine, could lead to all of this." "Butterfly effect," Vittorio said with a slight smile. "Small actions creating large consequences. Do you think we would have survived if we hadn't found each other? If I'd walked past you that morning, if you'd never noticed me?" Vittorio considered this seriously. "No, I don't think we would have. I think we were both drowning in different ways and we caught each other just in time." The sun finally set, leaving them in the gentle darkness of a spring evening. Stars began appearing overhead, more stars than Sophia had ever seen in New York, where light pollution drowned out all but the brightest celestial bodies. "It's beautiful here," she said softly. "It is," Vittorio agreed. "It really is." And in that moment, sitting on a porch in a small Oregon town, two people who'd started as strangers, a maid and a driver, both invisible, both forgotten, had found something precious: a home, a family, and the peace that comes from being truly seen. The story of Sofia Alvarez and Vittorio Leone didn't end with dramatic showdowns or last-minute rescues, though those had certainly played their part. Instead, it ended the way the best stories do, with two people who'd survived the worst finding joy in the ordinary, beauty in the simple, and redemption in each other's company. Sometimes the most incredible journeys don't take us to exotic destinations or extraordinary circumstances. Sometimes they simply take us from loneliness to connection, from invisibility to being seen, from mere survival to actually living. And that, in the end, was miracle enough. Thank you for joining us on Sofia and Vittorio's incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We have many more powerful stories of redemption, courage, and unexpected connections coming your way. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late for a second chance, that kindness matters, and that being seen can change everything. Until next time, remember, your story matters even when you feel invisible. Take care, and we'll see you in the next one.